Hi, lovelies! I just finished The Last Unicorn. Let's get into it. So I did give it a 5 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads. And I do really like this book because, one, I grew up on the movie, and a lot of us did grow up on that very nostalgic movie, and it was actually very true to the book, which I do really like. There was just a few parts that were left out for time's sake, and we'll get into those later. But for right now, let's just see what I liked about this book. So the first thing I really liked about it is that it was almost a coming-of-age story for the unicorn. Granted, she is immortal, and she was very old at this point. It even says in the book that she had almost lost her coloring. It wasn't a closer to death, it was just a maturity type of thing, which I do really like. And it was just her going out of her comfort zone to King Haggard's palace and just meeting people and finding love and discovering regret. And yeah, Molly Grew loved her in this. Smendrick was a drunken fool. In the movie, he's more of a sweet comic relief character. I think I do like the book a little bit better because in the movie it is unclear, but in the book it states that he is cursed with immortality, and I'll explain more on that later. And then Lear was awesome as always, but I'm a sucker for a romance, so let's get into our next point. So I definitely want to go through the characters in the book. We'll start with the unicorn. She is the main character of the book, and she's not really given a name until she turns human, and that name is given to her, Lady Amanthea, by Smendrick, who is saying that she's his niece. And she so like in the beginning of the book, she is very much reserved. She is very much watchful, almost a viewer to the story. Even Smendrick points out that she is real in a sense. And he means that by Molly and him are in a story with Prince Lear, and it's not until she turns human that she steps into the story and gets to be part of it instead of just watching it, which is really interesting. She's the type of character, I would say, who is almost deified in a sense. Smendrick is very worshipful of her. Molly is very worshipful of her. Lear is exceedingly worshipful of her. Even if he does not know she is a unicorn, he can tell in the back of his head that she is different than them, which is a interesting take on like forces of nature versus humanity, things that will last versus things that fade with time, which I do really like. Let's get into Smendrick. So in the movie, Smendrick is a lovable fool. He can be snarky, but a little just, yeah, he's Smendrick. He's the lovable fool in the movie. However, in the book, it's a little different. You see, in the book, it's stated that his master has cursed him with immortality until he can be competent in magic or surpass him in his level of magic. Now, Smendrick is a fool, as in the movie, but in the book, it's more of a incompetence almost with magic. He tries to have the magic and wrap it in himself instead of just letting it flow and just breathing with it and just letting it work through him. It's like a conduit or something. Now, Smendrick, in his immortality, has lived for a few hundred years at this point, and he himself is mad with how long he's been forced to live. And it's really interesting take because I do see the unicorn and Smendrick as foils for each other. One is cursed with immortality and is mortal, and the other is an immortal being cursed with mortality since the Lady Amanthea turns human. And it's very much in a way that they complement each other, because the unicorn, dealing with her curse, does go mad in the book. At first she tries to distance herself from Lear, and as the story progresses, she touches him because at this point she has not allowed herself to even hold hands, brush a cheek, anything, while Lear has been constantly reaching out for her. But as the Lady Amanthea knows herself at this point in the story to be a unicorn, she does not want to become attached, because that means she's mortal and has the possibility to die, to pass away. And she in herself does not want to forget the fact that she's a unicorn, because she has a forest and animals to protect back in her forest. And well, Smendrick goes mad with such a long life, and they almost connect together, because the first human that was kind to the unicorn was Smendrick, because as the unicorn was leaving her forest, everyone was trying to capture her because they saw a white horse. And it wasn't until Mommy Fortuna came and saw that she was a unicorn that she asked Rook and Smendrick what they saw. Rook saw a white mare, and Smendrick did in fact see a unicorn, but he lied. And he lied to protect her. And Mommy Fortuna told they were both fools, just for different reasons. And Smendrick, unlike in the movie, is drunk. Like, exceedingly drunk in the book, which I found at sometimes to be annoying and sometimes to be quite hilarious. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Because he was just trying to deal with his immortality, which is not a healthy coping mechanism, but he was attempting to cope in the way that he could. So, let's get into Molly Grew. My beloved Molly Grew. I have always loved her character, because I've connected with her in a lot of ways. She is the character that they meet after Captain Cully takes them in. Well, takes them in, he really captures them, because he's been taking from the poor and giving it to the rich mayor of a town that Smendrick and the unicorn were in. And then in the movie, it's just portrayed they're walking down the road and they get captured, but really in the book, they're at a feast. Well, Smendrick's at a feast. The unicorn is still a unicorn at this point, and she's in a field with the other animals, and they're very much avoiding her because they know she is different from them. So Molly, back at camp after they get there, she's very much, I do not have enough to feed them. The soup is water. Like, she's not having it. And it's stated in the book that she is one of the only few people who can actually challenge Captain Cully. And Cully, meanwhile, is being proud and boastful, and he makes some of his people sing songs about him, as we kind of see it in the movie, but in the book, he thinks Smendrick is this I can't remember his name, which is fine for right now, but he thinks he is someone who writes down songs and like spreads fame, because he wants to be like Robin Hood, but he's Robin Hood's opposite, because he takes from the poor and gives to the rich. And Smendrick is like, I'm not him. And Molly's like, you know what? It's too late for this. Let's just not. And it's one of the first times that Smendrick feels his magic. He just lets go, and the magic takes him, and here comes Robin Hood and Maid Marian and all of his men down the path. And Molly Grew is taken aback, and she follows them, and so does most of Captain Cully's men except for one. And they run off trying to join Robin Hood and his men to live a better life than what they have now. And then, of course, we get the famous scene in the movie where Captain Cully ties Smendrick to a tree, and then the tree comes to life, and then the unicorn helps him. And then Molly comes back and sees the unicorn. And she cries and curses at the unicorn, saying, "How could you come to me when I am this?" And this is a really important moment, because we as ourselves, we grow up and sometimes we don't feel worthy of things anymore. we let our childhood whimsy fall away to the wayside, and we let unicorns disappear from the world. But Molly can see her because she's never truly left that childhood whimsy behind. And she forgives the unicorn because after a minute, she's like, "You have come to me now as I am, and you have not turned away from me." And I think that's so sweet. And I do love Molly Grew. She's such an icon. She's sarcastic. She's always remained true to herself. And it's just a very powerful moment of Molly Grew and the unicorn very much connecting. And I do love her because later in the book, when they're at Hagrid's palace, she's pretty much worked to the bone. Granted, she is complaining, but she still does it because she knows they need to find the Red Bull to help the unicorn be free and to free her people. So eventually, she does. And I do admire the fact that when the unicorn came to them at the end, where she talked to each one of them, Molly would not say what she told to her. And I like to imagine that it's, you are never too old to believe in fairy tales, which I do like that. I feel like they had a very sisterly bond with themselves. So let's get into Prince Lear. Prince Lear, the prince of our childhoods, along with the likes of Prince Eric, Prince Philip, and all the other princes. He in himself is a very interesting take on the role of a prince in a story. In the beginning, he is arranged in marriage with another princess, which we catch a quick glimpse of as the unicorn passes. They are completing a ritual where the princess has to call for a unicorn. And yeah, the unicorn's there, but she does not come out. And then they go off and continue to Hagrid's palace. And then Prince Lear, later in the story, after he's met Lady Amanthea, ends the engagement with the princess, and he's taken from this lazy prince who has no motivation for anything into a hero. And he himself realizes that he can no longer turn back from his heroics. Yes, it started with Lady Amanthea, but eventually it turned into actually helping people. He slayed dragons, he slayed orcs, he rescued maidens. And yet he loved her. He loved the Lady Amanthea so much that he shaped up. And honestly, goals. So he's very much one of my favorite characters, along with Molly Grew and the unicorn. He's the type of person who I saw both in the book and the movie. I don't really know which one I like better, honestly. In the book, he feels so much more human because of his flaws. In the movie, he does seem human too. It's just, you don't get to know him deeper, other than he's a hero and he absolutely loves the unicorn, which same with the book, but you just get that little, like the tiny little bit more information. And once the Red Bull figures out that Lady Amanthea is a unicorn and Smendrick turns the unicorn back into a unicorn, his sword gets tossed. He stands there with his hands up, and he lets the Red Bull do what the Red Bull does in both the book and the movie, and he passes on from this world for his love for his lady. And it's in a way that the self-sacrifice, and the unicorn cannot deny it. She loves him. So she goes to his mangled body and heals him and brings him back. And he realizes that he cannot have her. But he will try. He will go off and to find the unicorn, and just even to catch a glimpse of her would be enough for a lifetime of travel. And then Smendrick takes him because at this point King Haggard is defeated, along with the Red Bull has walked into the sea, never to be seen again. And Smendra goes, "You cannot leave. You are no longer prince. You are king, my king Lear." And it's a lot of just stepping from this immaturity to this maturity and just what needs to be done. And at the end, Lear doesn't dream of the unicorn. And I don't think the unicorn could stand to just see him one last time. And he goes off. He escorts Molly and Smendrick himself to the border. And I would say to almost help him get over the love that could never be, they send a princess his way, because he admits that he cannot stop being a hero, because that is simply who he is now. He is someone who wants to help the damsels in distress, and who wants to help people who are hurting, and he wants to slay the dragons who are ruining people's lives. And I really do admire that, because it shows in our character that he truly is a better person. So let's get into his father, King Haggard. King Haggard is the main antagonist. The bull, I would say, is more of his subordinate, almost. It's never clear of who's in charge of who, but the Red Bull takes to Haggard what he loves and what he wants, and what he wants is the unicorns, because they are the only thing that has consistently made him happy. He has tried magicians, he has tried everything else, but he wants unicorns, and it's an almost unsatisfied way. He wants to possess them instead of just enjoy them and let them roam free. Because when the tide changes, he goes and watches the unicorns come in and out with the tide. And King Haggard in himself was always a horrifying figure. And he should be. He should be horrifying. The wanting to possess something in its entirety should scare you. And he in himself is greedy. Greedy, greedy, greedy. And he holds no love in his heart. He doesn't even like his own kid, who isn't, in fact, his own kid. He found a Lear on a street abandoned in Hagsgate, because I'll explain that later when I get to the people of Hagsgate, but he found Lear, and he doesn't even like him that much. Yes, he appreciated the fact that his son was finally being a hero and not being lazy, but that too did pass. It's the unsatisfied of life. This teaches us that we should find joy in whatever we can. We should find joy in the simple little things, the flowers, the birds, the clouds, the air. We should be content. Granted, that does not mean that we don't have to want better for ourselves, but it's just a reminder to appreciate what we have in this moment. And I do really like that message. And it's just in a way that in the book that King Haggard, it is his downfall. Because in the book, a witch built his palace and he did not pay her for it. And the witch, wanting what she was due, rightfully, cursed him that once his greed overreached the ocean, his palace would fall to it. And it did. We even see this in the movie. And his palace falls when the Red Bull goes to the ocean, because that is all his greed wrapped into one single being, the bull. As soon as the bull goes into the water, it is done. His palace crumbles, and Hagsgate falls into ruin from the prosper they once knew. And we never see him again. He is greed and nothing else. So let's get into Hagsgate. So Hagsgate is a town just outside of the castle where Prince Lear was found. And the witch firstly went to them and was like, hey, can you convince your king to please pay me? Give me what I'm due. We love a queen. And they said no. So she cursed them with prosperity, funnily enough, but only to the prosperity of the point where the castle stood. But when Smendrick and the unicorn and Molly Grew are there, they see that they look sickly and there's no children around. Because part of the curse is only someone from Hagsgate, Prince Lear, can break the curse. And Prince Lear helps the unicorn drive the bull into the sea. So they don't have kids. And they don't really enjoy what they have at the moment. And after they fall, and the palace falls in the ocean, Prince Lear goes, okay, well, this is where I was born. And he's like, I will make sure this place prospers before I build a palace, which, good for him. He is very kind, even in the face of somewhere where he was cast out. And honestly, they would honestly have gotten rid of him if they could have. But King Haggard grabbed him before that happened, thankfully, and he realized that they weren't good people, but they were still his people, and he had to take care of him. He would not be a tyrant. And so the people of Hagsgate really just are a lesson of enjoy what you have, and are also a lesson of just don't be complacent. If something wrong is happening, let it out. Let everybody know that something is wrong is happening, and speak up. Because we cannot be silent, otherwise it will just end ourselves. So let's get into my favorite parts of the book that were not in the movie. Okay, so there's this really cute little part where a bluebird sees the unicorn and goes and tells his wife, except he didn't bring home dinner, and she's like, wow, can't even feed our kids, great. And they're kind of arguing a little bit back and forth, and it's just a really cute moment that takes you away from the seriousness of why the unicorn is on her journey, and just a little bit of humor, which is super cool. There was also a part in the book which I really would have liked the movie to cover Smendrick's immortality. And yeah, there's like a few minor changes also that doesn't really matter to the plot, but it's still fun to see the changes. In the movie, the cat is black and white, while in the book, he is an orange cat, which both make a lot of sense. But yeah, and another part in the book is there's 4 sentinels watching the palace. They are not paid because King Haggard has money. He's a cheapskate. He is a cheapskate and doesn't want to pay his men. And these 4 men are older, like very old, and they really talk with Molly, and they've gotten to know her. They joke around with her while she's in the kitchen cooking their food, and they're very much just kind of there. I wouldn't say they have a big part in the story, but they have a bigger part because they ask the unicorn if for one wish, and that is just to be young again. And the unicorn, after she is transferred back into her unicorn self, she grants it. And they do help Lear, just get the kingdom where it needs to be. And I do really like that because, yes, they followed Haggard's orders, but they weren't bad people. They were just underpaid. And I do really like them. They brought like a little bit of humor in the story, which I do really like. And well, the skeleton, he was one of King Haggard's old sentinels who had a little too much to drink and got his head for it. But he is also an alarm system. And there's this really funny quote is, I may be disloyal to Haggard, but I am that disloyal, which is so funny to me because the skeleton realizes that the unicorn is in fact a unicorn, and he's like, you know what? That's not my problem. Haggard! So, and then of course, as the movie progresses, it is very much almost a tragedy in a sense, because the unicorn has never regrets. So let's get into that. Why do I say that The Last Unicorn is a tragedy? Because the unicorn has experienced humanity. She has felt herself living in the way that we live, and that our fact that we are constantly getting closer and closer to the end. She feels blood running through her veins. She feels her heart. And she realizes that she's no longer immortal. And I would say it's a mix between tragedy and body horror, which, written in a slightly different way, it could be even more horrifying, but because of how it is written, it is framed as a tragedy. Because the unicorn says that no unicorn was ever born who could regret. And yet she regrets because she could not give Lear the love that he needed because of her nature. And it's really interesting to see that how it just plays out with the book, because they love each other. They both absolutely, without a doubt, irretrievably love each other. And yet it can never be, which still kills me to this day. It's very much a story about love. It is a love story. Not just romantic love, but also platonic love. And just love for your people. And it's tragic that the romantic love and even the platonic love could not be, because that is the last time they saw the unicorn, unfortunately. And yeah, Smendrick grew to be a great magician. Molly had a great life. Lear became king. Haggard is no more, and everything seems perfect. And goes back to the way it was, almost, except being better for the characters. And Peter S. Beagle does such a great job in pulling your heartstrings and pulling the emotions from the depths of your soul as to make you wonder. And I honestly have not stopped thinking about this book. I've been meaning to make this video for a while now. I just got finished with the Type series by Miss Holly Black. It was great, but I could not stop thinking about this book because of how well it was written. Honestly, I think we should be reading this in school. And it's something that we can enjoy as children, and it's something we can ponder and just come back to enjoy as adults. And you don't even have to think about it. You can just enjoy the story that's presented to you, which I do like. I do love that. I do love the fact that you can both enjoy the story and just enjoy the story, but you can also like dig deeper and see the complexity of what this world is. And let's talk about the grand scape of the bull. The bull I would categorize as greed incarnate. The bull constantly is changing shape and filling spaces and is not one size. Even when he's walking into the ocean, it only takes him 3 strides to fully disappear, but it's so they can't comprehend it because he is so big and massive and scary. And he is greed incarnate because he is Haggard's greed. And he has rounded up all the unicorns one by one and forced them to the ground, covering their tracks with his own until they are in the sea. And all the unicorns have bowed their head and stayed in the water. And it's only when we realize that we can have joy in what we have now and still want better for ourselves that he's driven into the ocean. And he's never seen again, as far as we know in the story. And it's very much a love is more important than hate and greed, and love is the center of everything. And we should prioritize loving everything and just breathing and taking in everything that we have around us. It's a really sweet message. So let's get into my final thoughts. My final thoughts on The Glass Unicorn, it is that it's a must read for anyone. It's, honestly, I whipped through this. It is a very quick and fun and just a really cool read. And I definitely recommend watching the movie either before or after, probably after, because I did really like just knowing the characters just that little bit more as I watched the movie, and I will never see the movie the same. And now I understand the movie and the book better because they both very much complement each other. And I give this, once again, 5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend it. Add it to your bookshelf.